Hi, I'm Gary, and welcome to another episode of Physical Format Rock and Roll, where we talk about all things rock and roll and classic metal. Today is another episode of New Album Review, and we've got a pretty good one to talk about today. We're talking about those hairy-knuckled Mighty Mites from Down Under. It's the return of AC/DC. So this is their first new album since late 2014 when they released their Rock or Bust album. This one is called Power Up. There's what it looks like if you haven't seen it. There's the back of it. It's pretty cool. Got the silhouette there, the red lightning bolt thing going on. And then inside you got pretty cool black and white motion looking type picture. So most of you have probably already seen a few reviews of this, so I appreciate you tuning in. There's a lot of us idiots out here doing the same thing, so everybody that has tuned in, I appreciate that. Now, this is an album that a lot of people thought would never happen, right? Because the last time that AC/DC came around, Brian Johnson started having hearing problems, and it affected him to the point where he couldn't hear himself sing correctly, and he was just singing on muscle memory. So he decided, hey, I can't do it. I can't go out and tour. I can't record right now. So he was gone. Cliff Williams was playing, and he had said when the tour was over, Cliff Williams on bass, of course, that he was going to retire. Phil Rudd had legal problems that we won't get into, but he was out. And of course, Malcolm had passed away, and well, not at that time, but he was suffering from dementia, and he has since passed away. He has been replaced by Stevie Young, another member of the Young family. And as most of you know, when they did tour, they had Axl Rose doing some vocals for them live so they could carry things through. Well, somehow, Brian Johnson went off to Holland and had some kind of mysterious cure done. He evidently is not allowed to talk about it too much, going into details because it's not yet readily available to the public. So anyway, but he says he is pretty well cured, which is great news because now he's back on this album. He sounds great. He sounds just as good or maybe even better than he has for a few albums. He's got that great gargling with razor blade vocals going on that he manages to do. Is he back to Back in Black and For Those About to Rock type vocals? No, he's not at that point, but he still sounds really good on this album. Obviously there's some double tracking going on, but that's commonplace. But vocally, it stands up. Overall, this album is really good. It's great having Cliff Williams and Phil Rudd back. There's something about AC/DC that is extremely simple, but it works, right? And that's what this album does. This is probably the best album that they put out for a while. It, like I said, I wasn't that crazy about Rock or Bust. If you're curious to see my review of that album, it's on the channel. You can go back and look it up. So this one is, this one's good. This is a solid album. It's produced by Brendan O'Brien again, who has produced this and the two albums before it, and engineered by Mike Frazier. It sounds really good, got a nice, good, tight sound to it. And Brendan O'Brien, who I said is a producer, he also, 2 albums ago, the Black Ice album is actually another really good, solid AC/DC album. And if you've never heard that one, which I imagine most of you on here have, but if you haven't, I totally recommend going back and listening to that one. That's also a pretty good album. So here we are back with the good one, and as you can see on here, if you can read that, says, "This one is for Mal." So Malcolm Young has passed away. They dedicated this album to him. So this is kind of a memorial type album, much like Back in Black was for Bon Scott. And it holds up well. They did Malcolm proud. The other thing is Malcolm co-wrote all of these songs on here. So evidently him and Angus had a bunch of songs stockpiled, because my understanding is there's even more out there that they can use. You kind of wonder some of the songs on here, why they didn't make it to Rock or Bust, because they're superior songs. Rock or Bust had a couple of really good songs, but then the rest of it's kind of mediocre. But this, I'm not going to say this is, Back in Black or For Those About to Rock, but this is a really good, solid album. There isn't a bad song on here. Some are better than others, obviously. Shot in the Dark, which I imagine most of you have seen the video for. That's a really good one. There's a song in here called Through the Mists of Time, which is a lot different type of song for AC/DC. It's a very reflective kind of song. The music itself has a little bit more of a pop feel, at least for AC/DC standards. And I think it's one of those songs where you might kind of overlook it at the moment, but as time goes by, this will probably be one that you're gonna check out, just because it's so much different than the other ones. But like I say, it starts out really good with Realize, Rejection, then it goes into the Shot in the Dark. I think when it really kicks in for me is a song called Kick You When You're Down, and Witch's Spell, and Demon Fire. Those three are in a row. Well, Demon Fire is on site too, but if you have the CD, that's the order it would be. Those three really kick it in. You know how you always have every album that has a sweet spot to it, where there's a few songs in a row there that just really kick ass and you really like them. That's the way these three songs are. From there it goes into Wild Reputation, No Man's Land, another good one, Systems Down, Money Shot, and Code Red. Code Red totally sounds like something off of Fly on the Wall, as far as that goes. Some of these, I wonder how far back they go song-wise. But like I said, the sound of the record itself is really good. Everything is mixed really well. Stevie Young fits in really good with Angus, and everybody's just on the top of their game on the album. This is one that I would totally recommend. It's nothing groundbreaking here, right? It's AC/DC, but it's kind of what you want from AC/DC. They're just a good hard rock band. You don't expect, the AC/DC is probably the least pretentious band in rock and roll. They never claim to be anything that they're not, and that's why we love them. They're not a necessarily politically correct band. This is an album, it could have released it 15 years ago, wouldn't have mattered. They're not going to change things too much. So this is kind of exactly what you would want from AC/DC at this point in time. So Power Up. There is no song on here called Power Up, which is kind of strange. But anyway, the album is called Power Up, and that's what it does. So I highly recommend this new album from AC/DC. I'm really hoping that this album goes to #1 so we can get a good rock album, #1 back on the charts. I don't know if anybody pays attention to any of that stuff anymore, but it would be nice to see that. And I imagine this will probably sell pretty well as far as how albums sell today. So if you don't have it yet, I highly recommend it. Power Up by AC/DC. I'm Gary, and this is Physical Format Rock and Roll. If anybody would like to leave any comments, what you thought of the album or anything in general, that'd be fantastic. And if you would subscribe to this channel, I would really appreciate it. So until the next time, I'll see you down the road.